Okay, guys, so I don't want to replicate what 7 billion other YouTubers do, which is react to any piece of news and say, oh, this card is broken, or oh, this card is not very good, or here's my banlist prediction, or whatever. And you can already get that content from almost every YouTuber that exists, so I think it's totally redundant and useless, and I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to focus specifically on something more in depth. Now, as you know, I've been focusing on Whitewoods, which is now called White Forest. And I want to talk about the relevance of the Azamina cards specifically for the White Forest deck. So this is not just a generic response. I'm going to continue to do that whenever if I cover like other themes or other decks, then I'll try to do the same thing where I take a more in-depth approach to giving you an analysis on that thing rather than just doing general reactions. Okay, so these Azamina cards are coming out in Rage of the Abyss, and that is the same set that Devil of the White Forest is coming out in. Now, as far as I know, Devil of the White Forest is the only card for the White Forest archetype, specifically with that name, that has been announced so far. This is the one, if you didn't see my previous video or you don't know, where you contribute a synchro monster you control, then target a face-up card on the field, negate its effects until the end of the turn. Then, if you attribute a White Forest synchro monster, you can special an illusion from your grave. So the easiest way to use this is that, if they Dark Ruler you or they use whatever card, you send your Diabell, and then you bring back your own Diabell because it's an illusion monster. So probably we'll end up playing like one Woes, one Legend, and one Devil if we enter a Breaker format. And if we're not in a Breaker format, then maybe we can discuss if we should play this card. But these cards are not technically White Forest cards, but I do think they have like some type of synergy with the deck. So let's talk about the good cards. I'm going to skip over half of them because they're not relevant, but if you think there's something that I've skipped or something that I missed, let me know in the comments. Okay, first of all, we have the Azamina Synergy. So level 6, 1900, 1500, an illusion monster and a light spellcaster monster, but we are not going to be fusion summoning this the normal way, so this doesn't really matter for us. You can only use the second and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. Any battle damage your Azamina monsters other than itself inflict to your opponent is doubled. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you contribute this card. So that's the activation procedure, negate that effect. Now, it's worth mentioning that similar to how a lot of the White Forest stuff already works, we can play very well under Skill Drain, and this is no exception. So you contribute this card under Skill Drain, and it will still resolve successfully because Skill Drain only negates cards while they're face up on the field. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add a Sinful Spoils trap from your deck to your hand. So this doesn't matter who battles or by whose effect, it still works, but this is the least relevant effect. So Omni Negate here, skip that card. Let's go to Azamina Sol. So Illusion Monster and a Fiend Monster, doesn't matter. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. Oh, and it has a decent attack stat here, 2700. So if this card is fusion summoned, you can target one card on the field, send it to the graveyard. During each standby phase, you can target one Azamina or Sinful Spoils card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This, I think, will be an extremely useful effect. I should mention that this one plays under Drain, but this one doesn't for the main effect, but this allows you to recycle. Okay, skipping that one. Now, going on to the fusion spell, so Sacred Azamina. You can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. Reveal one Azamina fusion monster in your extra deck. So this is the one that on fusion summon sends a card, any card. This is the Omni Negate, okay? So we reveal one of these cards, and we send a Sinful Spoils card from your hand and or field to the graveyard for every 4 levels it has. As far as I understand, because they're level 6, we only count the 4 levels once, so that means we're sending one Sinful Spoils card. So we reveal the fusion monster, so those are the ones above, and then we send a Sinful Spoils card from hand or field. Okay, and then we special summon the monster, but it's counted as a fusion summon. Now this is important because that means that you can resummon those cards, and we'll get to that in a second. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Azamina monster you control or in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. So this is a way to kind of like recycle your engine. This is something we've seen with the Fiendsmith cards, which are not just good going first, they're also good going second, but they also recycle themselves all the way back into the deck and extra deck, so you can continue playing with the engine as the game goes on. So it's a pretty large degree of power creep when you see stuff like this if the cards are good. This card I think is underrated so far, so I am going to cover it. It's a quick play. So this is basically the same thing as the fusion spell. So you reveal in the main phase, you reveal an Azamina fusion monster, so the Omni Negate or the one that sends, and then you send a Sinful Spoils card from your hand or field to the graveyard for every 4 levels it has, so only one because they're level 6s. And then importantly, if those cards are set, reveal them. So it means you can also send a face down card. And you special summon the revealed monster, and it also counts as a fusion summon. And remember that this one only gets to send a card if it is fusion summoned. And this one does not care if it was fusion summoned or not. It always has the Omni Negate. Okay, this is relevant because during your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Azamina monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So what does that mean? It means that if you use the Omni Negate for this card, even though you can only, like the Omni Negate is a hard once per turn, if you're using it on a different turn, this doesn't have to be fusion summoned. You can still revive it off the other card and you can get the Omni Negate again, whereas you will not get the send for this card because it has to be fusion summoned, not just special summoned. And also you should remember that this is an extra hard once per turn because this says you can only use one of the first and second effect of this card's name per turn, and only once that turn. So you can't do both. But that's still, this card is still good. Okay, we're skipping the trap. Now the best card in the entire archetype. So this is a Sinful Spoils card, which is crazy, because that is what the fusions have to send to be able to fusion summon. So you can only use the first, second, and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. You can tribute a monster from your hand or field. Add one Azamina card from your deck to your hand. So this is really the requirement here for the entire engine to function. You just need to have access to a monster. Now, unfortunately, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because this does not say monster card, you can't tribute a set toy soldier or toy tank because it's not a monster, but it is a monster card. And so since it doesn't say monster card, you can't tribute them while they're set. So that's unfortunate because you can't trigger those cards, but you know, it is what it is. Add an Azamina card from your deck to your hand. So you would be adding either the quick play or most likely you would be adding Sacred Azamina. And then you can just fusion summon because if we just go over these, you're just revealing the card and then you're sending the Sinful Spoils card. So you already have everything you need. If a monster is sent to your opponent's graveyard, you control an Azamina monster. You can make your opponent lose 1500 and you gain 1500. I don't know why that's there. During the end phase, this is super relevant. If this card is in your graveyard, because it was sent there from the face up spell and trap zone this turn, you can set it. Okay, this wording is very important. Why? Let's say that you start your turn with this card. Okay, you tribute your monster from your hand or field and you add this card. Okay. Then you reveal the Silvera, the Omni Negate, and you send this Sinful Spoils of Deception to the graveyard, and you special summon that Silvera from your hand or field for every 4 levels it has. So you're just sending that one, Deception. You've now summoned Silvera, and then this card and Deception are in your graveyard. Since this card will reset itself during the end phase, that means that you have access to another send. So this card, if you had access to this card, says during your main phase, this one. During the main phase, reveal an Azamina fusion monster from your extra deck and send a Sinful Spoils card from your hand or field to the graveyard for every 4 levels it has. And if those cards are set, reveal them. So the reason it says this is because normally you can't just send a face down card because it's not like a known card to your opponent. Fusion summoning is a different type of mechanic, so it's irrelevant to this. And then you special summon the revealed monster. Now, this won't be able to reset itself twice because it has to be sent from the face up spell and trap zone. But the reason I'm mentioning this is just to say that it makes this card better because if you've already drawn this, it's not like a brick. You're already being able to reset this card. So I could definitely see this being a very, very strong card. And, you know, there's maybe a reason to want to draw it. Because it doesn't say Sinful Spoils or whatever, you don't have like a different way to add it, but that's just so that you know both of those cards are relevant. Now, I think that for our deck, one of the things is if you're going to play a Sinful Spoils, or sorry, not a Sinful Spoils, a skill drain version of the deck, then this card kind of contributes to your win condition in the same way that I was talking about using Cosmic Blazar Dragon is almost like a pseudo win condition for the deck under skill drain because the skill drain doesn't stop Blazar from resolving. So if their deck loses the skill drain, which is a lot of decks in the format, and they can't out the Blazar or they can't out the drain through the Blazar, then you basically win the game. The problem with going for the Blazar build, unless you're playing a Centurion package, which has other issues because it reduces the number of other cards you can play, you don't have access to cycling through your Whitewoods cards. But this is a much lower commitment play than going for the Blazar or like, a double Crimson Dragon play or whatever. And so I think this makes Skill Drain a lot more viable in our deck as a win condition, and it also makes it to where you could consider not just maining triple Skill Drain, but also maining triple Prosperity. And then you get into the discussion on do you play hand traps or not, because there's going to be Centurion cards that are going to try to instantly kill you, and then there's going to be the Gimmick Puppet FTK. And so whether or not you play hand traps or not will probably depend on your locals environment and whether you're going to a large event, and like how much you value playing against those other decks. But this does like impact the type of play style that we can have. And this card, because this sends any card on the field, is like pretty relevant. And during each standby phase, because it targets an Azamina or Sinful Spoils card in the graveyard and adds it to your hand, it helps you go through your engine. It kind of fits the theme of the Whitewoods playstyle, where you are cycling through your resources basically every single turn. So I think these would really complement that. I had initially thought about trying to cover a Kashtira White Forest deck, and in theory, it complements the idea of a grindy playstyle, but I think these cards just work better with it while also giving you, like a continuous spell that keeps bringing itself back that you can also use as fodder. So yeah, that's useful. Also, the scripting has been done for Omega, but the card art hasn't been put in, which is kind of unfortunate. But the Sinful Spoils of Deception is the spell card. So this is the one where you want to tribute a monster from your hand or field. Now, I'm not sure what the best way is to do this yet because I haven't exactly labbed this. There are obviously ways where, like, if you were to quickly just cycle through a very, very basic Fiendsmith combo, like if we go for the Lurie and we bring out the Lurie, I'm not saying that you should be playing the Fiendsmith cards with the Azamina cards. I think you can, but then you basically have to play breakers because you don't have a lot of space. But let's say that we were doing this. We were doing this type of play, and we summon the Sequentia, and then the Sequentia wants to summon a Dies Irae, and so we shuffle back these cards. So this is a very normal scenario. Now, what happens here? Do you use the Tractus to fusion summon a Lacrimosa, which you don't need to do, and then bring this back, and then equip this from the grave, and you have like another body? Or if your other plays were stopped or you had no other engine, you just have like hand traps or whatever, you have to equip this from your field to the Dies Irae, and this is a huge waste of resources. You would rather make a play and then turn this into like an Appaloosa or an SP or something else. What's kind of cool that I've noticed if you are combining these is that you just tribute that card and it's not a waste because this just comes back from the graveyard anyhow. This is like always what you were going to equip, and so you haven't lost resources. And I think it's important when you're building different variations of this deck to always think about how you can, what you can do to make it so that you're as efficient as possible, because that's what this deck is good at. So then you add the Sacred Azamina, and let's say we are bringing out the Silvera, and so we have to send the Sinful Spoils of Deception. So the Sacred Azamina in the grave can target an Azamina monster you control or in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. So we don't want to use that right now because we haven't even used the Silvera yet, but like let's say, that like the opponent does something or they activate a nib or whatever, which Dies Irae can interact with, then you tribute the Silvera to negate the nib. And then that will be in the grave, and so now we can shuffle our Silvera back into our extra deck and add this card back to our hand. Now, we don't have another Sinful Spoils card to just resummon it or whatever, but if we ladder through like the Diabel stuff, so here we would have to send the Imperm. This is obviously not good. I'm just like trying to give you an example here quickly of Let's go into this card and let's say, okay, we're gonna set this and we're gonna add the woes because now we need that. And we can bring this card back and we can bring this back. So this is not like my actual video of like showing you how this should be played. I'm just showing you like a sample combo here to show you that, to be very careful that I'm clicking the right card, that you do have ways to get this card back again. So yeah, I also like one of the reasons I want to show this is because the spell card. So so yeah, this card, just remember that you do have to like still have a send for this. You still have to send the Sinful Spoils card, and this being face up is like, you know, useful because it can only reset itself in the end phase if it was sent while it's face up. So you will get it back right now, and yeah, then you just make whatever other plays you're gonna make. So that's basically just like a general overview of like some of the stuff that makes this deck good. I also want to show you in terms of ratios, like how you could think about this. So I mentioned before in my video on what makes a deck good, I talk about the importance of thinking about what your ratios are and how it depends on the type of cards you're playing, like if you're on hand traps or breakers. The general rule of thumb, if you're on hand traps, is that you should be on 15 hand traps at least. And that makes it so that your typical hand will draw you 2 hand traps. You just saw that I drew 1 imperm. So that is useless against most decks that are actually good because it's just not enough of an interruption. You can actually see that some really good hands of like Snake Eyes, Fiendsmith now are playing through 4 hand traps. So then you consider, well, do you just play breakers because the hand traps don't do anything? In which case you need around 10, like it's a 10 to 12 breakers is a safe amount. So if you were on hand traps, you probably can't play both the Azamina stuff and the Fiendsmith package, even with the smallest Fiendsmith package possible. You could argue for taking out 2 engravers and just say you're going to make it off of Closed Heaven, but like this is the best card in the package, so I don't know why you would cut that down. So you could play both Fiendsmith and Azamina, and then probably just play breakers. Maybe keep the Nib and the Veiler if you're on the Granite build, because you're searching the Nib and you can also search the Veiler. So those cards are part of your combo. They're not just hand traps. And then Nib you can kind of count as part of your ratios for the high impact cards you're playing, but the rest of these would basically be power spells. So it could be stuff like Evenly, it could be talents. I think that there's probably not space for Super Poly in this type of version, although Super Poly is very strong. You could take out the Draco Berserker and the Gallant Granite because those are kind of the most flexy spots that we have here. I am liking the Draco Berserker in other versions of the deck because if you summon Formula Synchron off of the Diabel, then Sinister Sovereign. So this card I was talking about in my tech video, you can make with the Draco Berserker and the Formula Synchron because this is a worm, and this only needs the non-tuner to be a worm, not the tuner. So like, you know, you just have to figure out what you're going to cut based on playing breakers, and then I would recommend like if you can play breakers that are flex on the dice roll, like Super Poly and Talents, those are the types of cards that'll be best to build your deck with, but that will obviously be format dependent. You also can argue that maybe you should cut down on the toy engine and play like no Rota and only 1 soldier, in which case your White Forest cards become a lot worse, but you allow yourself to play like, this alone allow you to play like 3 more hand traps. And so you're getting really, really close to that 15 magical number. And then you think like, okay, is there something else I can cut? Like I probably would just play 1 Sylve. You know, like if you were to do, I'll actually just show you here. So let's say Veiler, we add in 2 more Veiler. I'm just going to put a random, hello, please show up. Random placeholder stuff in here. So now you have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and now you're like almost on the 15. So it's like, do you play 1 engraver? Like, what do you do? Do you go to 41 and play the 15 hand traps, and then just say, well, it probably has a negligible impact on my deck. So anyhow, I'm just showing you that there are ways that you can play this deck without hurting it, and it is somewhat synergistic because you have ways of recycling the Sinful Spoils of Deception. And while it already does have a way to recycle itself, the more times you can access this card, the better. So yeah, I think these cards are extremely strong. They will end up being very splashable, and probably a lot of decks will end up playing them. But you know, it does also make sense for us to play them. So that's my general review of these cards. Let me know if I missed anything. Also, I forgot to say, I am going to start reviewing viewer uploads if people decide to upload. It could be that nobody wants me to review anything. So I'm going to put a link to my Discord in the description below. And if you want to submit your build for White Forest, then you can submit it in a channel there and I will make a video where I go over. If I get like at least a few submissions, I'll do a video on it. So thanks for watching.